have a very interesting position, and we're going to do some calculation today. I mean, as you can see from the from the position itself, that it's probably kill each other kind of calculation. That should be very interesting. And this is actually played by Vishy, Anand, a long time ago. If I remember right, probably even before he became a grandmaster. And this is against India's first international master. A very, very interesting game. But of course, lots of interesting calculation to be done. Well, before I start, I usually make this disclaimer to everyone. I'm going to say that again. Just try to have fun by calculating on your own. No engines, nothing. It's going to kill the fun. So no looking up games, nothing, okay? And that will distract me from the class and will not help you, not help anyone else. So let's make that very, very clear. All right. So we are going to calculate as much as possible today without moving the pieces. And that's always the fun, because I think then your big decisions will start from there. Because once you make the move, obviously you cannot change it back. So whatever in-depth calculation you need to do has to be done right at the beginning, right? So, okay, let's get started. What is the first thing we are looking at here? I might ask questions on the board where you can answer, of course, as different variations come in, because we're obviously going to calculate a lot of different variations. H takes G5 it is. We definitely have to calculate H takes G5. And there's one more move. There's one more move you have to calculate. Knight takes D4, yeah? So we have a couple of interesting moves. Sorry, H takes G5. We simply want to cash in and take the piece and see if we can survive. And Knight takes D4 to say, you know what? I'm going to take the pawn and ask you to prove to me that your attack works, right? So let's all start with the most obvious one. I want you to calculate H takes G5. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I want you to think about it and tell me if this is doable. So give me a small variation if it's possible, and tell me if you think you like it. I don't think we should spend more than 2 minutes in this variation. That's probably a little bit of a hint. All right, I'm beginning to see some results or like some suggestions already. Okay.
It doesn't give me the question.
I didn't ask any questions, just chat.
Oh, just chat, okay.
Yeah, just chat. At some point, I'll ask those questions. Right now, I'm just using chat, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think most of you seem to be agreeing to this. I do have to change the chat to only me, sorry. So we don't have spoilers and we don't talk about the answers to everyone. Towards the end, maybe we'll open the chat up. But okay, H takes G5, I think after F takes G5, it just doesn't look like you can defend it. Yeah, I'm threatening Knight F6, I'm threatening Rook H3, and it just looks completely lost. So it's very important that you want to get rid of bad moves as soon as possible. Otherwise, you cannot calculate important variations. Okay, that leaves you to Knight takes D4. So question is, now you have to calculate Knight takes D4, which is the next best thing. So like I pointed out already, it's very important that you get rid of the bad ones, but it's also very important that you don't get rid of the good ones. So it's always a balance in calculation. So you can feel it, you can calculate it, you can use some tips. For example, never end a calculation in the middle of a forcing sequence. When something is interesting, keep going as much as you can, push it, right? And always make sure the evaluation, the end evaluation is correct. Check it twice or thrice, because once you say this is a winning variation, you should not be going back to check that again. That's kind of important. Because if you evaluate incorrectly, you can calculate 10 moves in a beautiful way, but if you evaluate it incorrectly, your whole sequence is pretty useless. You'll end up making bad decisions anyways, right? So be very careful about it. All right, now we're going to calculate knight takes d4. Again, I'm not going to ask any questions on the board yet. So just do the chat. Let's talk about what's going on. What does white really look at after knight takes d4? Okay, Sarvagna is correct. I think that's the main move. James, you're right. Ryo, good. There is only one important move to calculate. Okay, so Eric is pointing out the knight at some point can come to f5. That is true. That's one of the reasons why this aggressive move can also be an important move to calculate, because you do have a defensive resource in that. But when and how, we don't know. We'll have to think about it. But okay, after knight d4, I think pretty much everyone is in agreement that the first move you have to calculate is what? Knight takes h6. You have to calculate knight takes h6, right? There is probably knight f6 check, which also can be calculated a little bit because it's also a forcing move. But clearly knight h6 is the first move you have to calculate. So let's start calculating knight h6. What is happening after knight h6? Well, black's response is pretty forced. The only move g takes h6, very good. Let's keep pushing like this one step at a time. After g takes h6, what happens? Okay, I see some of the calculation going on. Very good, keep going. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to give you, let's say, between 3 to 5 minutes, okay? And again, I'm not asking any questions on the board yet. You need to give me what is the most important variation you have calculated until that point, and the evaluation of it. So take your time. I don't want to rush anyone into making a decision quickly. It's important that you take your time. So even if you don't have the exact answer, what I'm going to do is towards the end of this, I'm going to ask a question on the board where you will have to give me what the most critical variation that you're going to be calculating will be. Aryan, good, keep calculating. Sefer, I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Let me go back to your previous chat. I think all of you are pretty much calculating most important variations. So Kelsey, I see that you're finding a way to cash in on the material, okay? Right, we're about 2 minutes in. I'll give you maybe 2 more minutes. Aryan, that's right. I think that's the exact response from Black. Owen, you're also saying the same thing. And Kelsey, you were trying to cash in, but I think there is something that you missed in your variation. I would say check your variation because I think you missed something for Black. No, Aryan, your variation so far is correct. Yeah, basically, all I said is that you're going in the right direction. I mean, I'm not going to say anything about the evaluation. By the way, we want to be completely open about the evaluation. White might end up winning, Black might end up winning. We don't really know. And that's right because we are looking at this from a game perspective, right? Santosh, that's interesting. Okay, James has given me a final line. So James, you're also missing something though. I think James and Kelsey and a few others you might be missing one important factor. The Black knight is on d4. Do not forget that. Black is playing knight takes d4 on move 1. That seems to be doing something. By the way, I think I'm going to start with the first point of, knight can definitely go. So knight takes d4, knight h6, g h6, queen h6. I think some of you are debating between f6 and f5. I think one move definitely stands out. I think it's very obvious that you need to play which move. f6 or f5? Yep, I think you have to play f6. The reason f6 makes sense is because also attacking the knight, right? If you play f5, you are definitely clearing up the path for the king, but you are not attacking the knight, and you're also stopping the knight f5, right? And also, in some variations, e6 might be hanging. That's very much possible. But the knight on d4 is actually kind of defending the e6 pawn. So that's something also you have to be careful about. But yeah, f6 has to be the main line, yeah? I have to play f6 in that position. And here, there are a few candidate moves that you have to calculate to see what is going on. I guess there is queen g6 check, there is rook h3, there is rook g3. These are the moves you have to calculate. Okay, Roger has given me a big variation. Okay, now I'm actually going to ask a question on the chat. Now, this is for Black, right? And you're playing this from Black, and the first move is basically knight takes d4. So you're definitely going to do that move. And let me get to the point and say, okay, give you 2 minutes. Actually, you have spent a lot of time, so I'll give you 90 seconds to make this answer. And
On the board or just
now it's on the board. I just asked the question.
oh, okay.
You're playing Black, just the main variation. I want you to play knight takes d4 as move 1. And then after knight takes h6, I think this is not too difficult. It's kind of obvious, this particular variation.
It doesn't allow me to play.
It doesn't allow you to make a move?
Okay, yeah, now it's back. Now it's back.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. I think pretty much all of you are getting this right. Okay, let's see, is the time up? You have the last 12 seconds. Some of you still can answer. A check mark next to your name simply means that you got it right. Ari, that's all. Yeah, if you got it right. Oh, Santosh says he wants the link of the board. Yes, Santosh. I'm sending it right here. One more time. The password is 123456. All right. Basically, the one point I wanted to just make is a lot of miscalculation happened around Queen G6 check. Just let me go back again. Knight D4. And after knight takes h6, actually, I'm not going to draw arrows. Knight takes h6, g takes h6, queen h6, f6. Queen g6 check, queen g7, and queen takes g7, followed by knight takes e6 was done by some players. But the problem is the knight on d4 defends e6. So you simply cannot do that. So the only real threat you can create is with rook g3 or with rook h3. Now against rook h3, I think pretty much everyone figure out what the move is. Queen g7 is a simple move. I'm going to stop the black queen. I mean, I'm going to stop your threat. Again, knight on d4 is threat defending e6. That's very important. So the main move you have to look at is rook g3. Now, some of you played f takes g5, which is fine, but I think knight f5, I mean, I wouldn't say it's fine. F takes g5 is one of the moves you have to calculate, but knight f5 is very strong. And it's very straightforward after knight f5. I'm threatening knight g3 with a check. So black is going to be clearly up material. So after knight f5, I think white is completely lost. If you take anything, knight g3 will be a check. I'm also hitting your queen, and queen g6 check will still run into queen g7. And now again, if you play some queen g7, knight e6, in the end, after you take everything, I will take on g3 with the check again. And I'll be up a piece. You might have a few pawns, but I don't think it's enough. And black should be better or probably winning at that point. So the reason, so now this really doesn't work. So my next question would be, what is the most critical line for white then, right? I mean, clearly after knight d4, white cannot back out. White has to play something forcing, and this variation just didn't work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play knight d4 on the board, and I'm going to ask a question this time. And it does not have to be a full answer. The main question is, what is the critical line for white? I'll give you a couple of minutes. Think about it and answer.
Just chat now.
No, I'm asking a question.
Oh.
So what can white actually play, which would be the most critical variation that you can say at least it's worth calculating? Lots of common calculation errors happening. I'll address this. That's not it, Aryan. That's not the move we're looking at. All right, I think the time is pretty much up. Looks like nobody really got it, really. We have about 10 seconds left. I was hoping someone will get this. Can I redo it? Maybe I can, but now you already know the answer though, because once you have a wrong answer, if you scroll next to it, it'll tell you what the right answer is. Okay, time's up. Now, I think some of you are asking what is wrong with rook h3 on move 1. I guess rook h3 runs into knight f5, yeah? What's the problem with knight f5? And I don't see what the continuation is. Once I put my knight on f5, you cannot play knight h6 check anymore. I'll simply take back. And it looks completely lost to me. So you can't do that. Now, the first problem I have is some of you jumped into knight f6 very quickly, right? And this is the most common calculation error anyone can do. If you have a sequence of 4 or 5 move variation and you see that something doesn't work, then you end up changing move 1. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. You have to take one step at a time. So watch this. So knight h6, g6, queen h6, and at this point, rook g3 and f6. Sorry, f6 and rook g3. So knight f5 is the point we concluded that this is not satisfactory for white. White needs to find a different move. So we take one step back at a time, and we say, okay, are there any candidate moves here? Now we did look at queen g6. We did look at rook h3, and both of them we didn't find them to be again good, and we didn't find any other interesting move. This capture is simply going to allow me to take with the rook and nothing interesting. So we take one more step before this. This is the thing most of you did not do. Here you took 2 steps back. You have to do one move at a time. And here clearly white has a very strong candidate move, which is rook g3. And compared to the previous position where rook g3, knight f5 was happening, here there is actually a big difference, right? Now, let's do the chat to see why. First of all, we need to look at knight f5. Of course, there are 2 candidate moves. There is knight f5 and pawn takes g5, right? James, that's right. We have to look at that, right? So after rook g3, there are 2 important moves to calculate. By the way, after knight h6, g6 was almost forced, right? So we have to calculate rook g3, but I'm going to go back here and I'm going to make you calculate from here because you still don't know if you want to take, yeah? Actually, I'll make it a little bit easier because let's ask one question. Is there any other move that you see other than knight d4? We know hg5 doesn't work. Any other move that you see for black? Because in a practical game, that's how I want you to calculate. Before you spend like 2 hours calculating knight takes d4, you have to look for potential candidate moves and make a practical choice. Does black have any other move? Let's spend like 30 seconds to a minute thinking about it. Bishop e2 is the move that Raya was suggesting. I think bishop e2, I will probably do the same. This time you just don't have knight f5, yeah? f5 is being suggested. Whether f5 or f6, I think white will simply play e takes f6. And you can't even take it back because h6 hangs. So fair enough, right? I mean, we can simply say at this point, practically you have no choice. So in a game, you could play knight d4 at this point. Because whether it works or it doesn't work, this is your only hope, right? Okay, so let's play knight d4 on the board. And from this point, we can still calculate. White does have some options, yeah? I mean, I think knight h6 is probably the only realistic way to play. But I don't have to go all in yet. I don't know if I can actually come back. That endgame would be bad. Sorry, actually, not even an endgame. My bad. Rook is hanging. I don't have a lot of other options. I think some of you are suggesting rook h3, but knight f5, I think black is clearly better. So probably white's move is also very, very forcing. So in that case, maybe I'll play this, guys. I'll go to this point. Now let's calculate. So we have to calculate 2 variations. One is h takes g5, one knight takes f5. First question I'm going to ask everyone in chat is, what do you want to calculate for black? Because the first move you pick is usually you do some candidate moves, you look at it a little bit, and then you pick one of the moves and you spend time. By now, we've already spent some time. Whichever move you guys pick, I want you to spend the next 3 or 4 minutes calculating that thoroughly. And Max, one thing I would say is don't jump to conclusion in any variation that quickly. I want you to keep your mind open because let's keep calculating. Let's try to make decisions, but let's not decide if it's winning or losing. Let's try to postpone that as quickly as possible. Only the bad variations, only the ones that you can instantly say this is bad, I want you to get rid of them. All the other ones, you have to reserve your conclusion. So Aryan, let's make sure we spend some time and make sure our evaluation is correct. If you feel like that is correct, you can go for it. So you have about 3 minutes. Whichever move you picked, Whether you picked knight f5 or you picked h takes g5, I want you to calculate. Well, are there any other moves? I don't think there are any other moves other than knight f5 and h takes g5, right? Yeah. Yeah. Aryan, see, when you spend more time, you find stuff. Yeah. Everything that looks like it's over might not be so obviously over. Evan wants to go with intuition. All right. Okay. So we have spent some time. Now I'm going to explain what I would have done in this position. I think just as a calculation tip, right? I would calculate knight f5 first, right? And the reason why I would do that is because first, I can see an option for white to get away with h when I play h takes g5. That the first move is h takes g5, rook takes g5 check. So typically I would look at both the moves for about 30 seconds or like a few seconds here and there, maybe make it 1 minute, doesn't matter. But the point is I'm scanning some basic information for me to make a decision. Because once I really dive into one of the variations, I'm spending a lot more time. I'm probably looking at the next 10 minutes of my calculation being invested into that variation, right? Of course, I can always come back. But the reason why I'm thinking this is because after h takes g5, rook takes g5, I have to play queen g5, and white has a draw. So I know that white cannot lose that. White at least has a draw. I know I have rook and 2 minor pieces, so I have enough material, but white definitely at least has a draw. And one more reason I would go knight f5 is because knight f5 worked in the previous variation. The most straightforward variation where they took on h6, knight f5 worked for us. And that's the winning move. So there is no reason to go out of that. I know some of you said this is a forcing sequence, but you have to calculate knight f5 here. So if you calculate knight f5 in depth, we want to try to see what's the best. So I'm going to ask this as a question now. And in this case, I want you to play knight f5. Of course, in the answer, I'm going to ask the question on the board. What is the sequence and what would be the final evaluation? Yeah. So let's say 20 points for this, and I'll give you 2 minutes. We'll also be talking about the evaluation. For now, we're talking about the moves. So the question is on the board. Take your time, though. Don't rush. I gave you 2 minutes.
Do we play the best move in the position, or do we play knight f5?
You have to play the best move.
I think black at best definitely only has a draw.
Possible. But I want you to play knight f5, guys, by the way. Some of you are playing h takes g5. Don't play h takes g5. I want to play knight f5 and I want to play the best variation. And I want to know what happens. Of course, we'll talk about the evaluation, but first let's go through the sequence at least. So you have a couple of minutes. Aryan, I'm not going to reopen the chat yet. Not yet. So Kelsey, the variation you gave in chat to me, that looks immediately lost for black. So obviously black cannot play that. That's why you have to think a little bit more. I'm not sure if it wins for black, Owen. We'll talk about it in just a second. Right? How much time do we have? We have 30 more seconds left. I see not bad. A few of you have gotten it. Some of you are still taking your time. I like that too. Unfortunately, some of you have given a variation which instantly loses. So I'm not sure how we can play with that. Ryan, that's right. That's the reason why you can't do that. All right, time is up. Let's resume the share. Okay. Like I said, most of you, what you did was you took on G3. I mean, that's just, you have to discard this variation, because what I'm doing in my mind is I'm playing Queen G3 and I'm looking at candidate moves. I literally have one move here. This is an easier variation to discard because Queen G7 is make. And Queen G5, you don't really have to calculate. I can take with the knight, I can take with the pawn. It's just whichever way I do it, it's just completely lost. So this is a variation which you should discard very quickly. I would say less than 30 seconds, this should be out of the window. So you're spending time in something more with more quality. Yeah. So
1 second.
What is it?
Or just 1 second.
Or 1 second. Well, 1 second, I don't know. we might run into problems. That leaves you with other questions. What are the possible moves? It's easy to answer here because you don't have a lot of moves. This move runs into knight f8 with a check, and I just lost material. I still have a fork here, but I think actually let's see. Maybe what is the most precise way to finish off here? If knight f8, queen f8. Oh yeah, sorry. You can take on e7 and take on f8 with a check. Yeah, of course. So why not king h8? That makes more sense. Yeah, correct. This is a check, so you obviously have to discard. Yeah. Queen takes, knight f8. So this is a position. Unfortunately, some of you just stopped calculating here, and this is the point I was saying, is that you have to always push through when something weird is in the position or something interesting is in the position. Here, this is still interesting to me. You cannot stop calculating because the knight is in an odd place and has nowhere to go. So actually, rook c8 wins the knight back. Otherwise, white's completely up material. I'm up an exchange. I'm up 2 pawns. Should be completely winning. But rook c8, now I'm actually winning the knight back. Now the question for me is, for all of you, is that what is the evaluation? What do you think is the evaluation in this position? I'm not going to reveal the exact evaluation until the end of the class because we have to analyze the other variation too. What do you guys feel? Actually, I want you to make that evaluation decision here, not play. Because if it's okay for black, you can play it. But if it's not okay for black, you can't play it. Let's type in chat an evaluation. Plus equals, plus minus, minus plus, whatever it is. Equals, just equal, whatever it is. White will have rook and 2 pawns for black's 2 minor pieces. Okay. Interesting. By the way, I think I see some of you just joined the room. So I'm just going to make sure I share the board with you guys. You can log into this board with your name and password is 123456. We're not evaluating this position on the board. We are evaluating the variation we saw, which is knight f5, knight e6, king h8, queen e7, knight e7, knight f8, and rook c8. That's the position we're evaluating. Okay, so I see some of you are saying black is winning. I got some equal. I got some plus equals. Aryan, when you're saying good variation, are you saying good variation for white or for black? I'm guessing for black. Yeah? Black. Okay, so you like black's position. All right, so here comes the decision now. For those who thought this is not good for black, and again, I'm not going to reveal the evaluation yet, right? But definitely, if you think black is not doing well, then you have to consider this. Because you might say at this point that I would just take a draw and move on. And if white doesn't have anything better than a draw, I'm happy, right? So I could simply take on g5 and we'll take a draw. Instead of going to knight f5 variation where I'm actually down 2 pawns for the rook and 2 minor pieces, where I might be worse and I might lose. So we are going to calculate h takes g5 for the team that decided that white's better. Even though some of you decided black is better, I want you to jump in on this just for the fun of it. If you think black is better, then you definitely would make the decision during the game and you would play knight f5. That's kind of easy because h takes g5 has a draw and you found a better variation, so why not play it, right? But if you found it risky or if you found it better for white, then you are definitely going to start calculating h takes g5. So now we're going to do that, right? The question now, of course, obviously is for white. Does white have anything better than a draw? If I want to make a draw, I just check and it's game over. So I'm not going to ask this question on the board yet. I'm going to ask you to do it in chat. Does white have anything interesting? I'm going to give a couple of minutes and see if anyone can find anything interesting for white. Audience very quick. It's like, no, let's move on. Well, the fact that I'm asking, Aryan, means that there should be something interesting, yeah? The difference between having this position in a game and having this in a class, you have a lot more information. The information is that there is something going on. That's the reason we're asking. Eric is also saying nothing interesting. Well, there is something interesting. Obviously, I cannot checkmate. I just have a queen. And I also don't have much with my rook because it takes me a long time to bring my rook into the game. I might also have to need to take care of back rank problems. So, James, that doesn't seem so strong. If you play h4, it's very slow, yeah? Black, remember this, your move should really scare me as black. Otherwise, the move is not interesting. If you don't find anything that's going to like worry black, then don't worry about that variation. Move on. Keep looking for something else. Except for what is that idea? Why is that going to help? I don't see how we're going to do anything. Eh? So Roger, I would take it with my knight though when you play f5. And I don't see what the interesting thing would be. You gave g4 first, okay. Let's go to your variation. Queen g5, king h7, queen h5, king g7, and then f4, f5, f6. So, well, in your variation, I don't see g4. So maybe you want to play g4 and then play f4, f5. I mean, g4 instantly loses though, because I will have knight f3 and I'm threatening rook h2. I'm also stopping queen g5 check, so you won't have anything in that position, yeah? If you have queen h5 check, king g7 in that position, if you play g4, it should be lost. If you have queen g5, king h8, if you play g4, you're still lost because I will have rook h2 check, knight f3 check, and take your queen. So I don't think you can play g4. Not possible. Okay, I'm going to give you a small hint. If it's not about checkmating, maybe it's about some material. Pieces, hanging pieces are always, good to attack. Let's see with that clue if anyone can find anything interesting. I think Jenny found something. Good job, Jenny. We got something interesting already. One person has found it. I think Ryan Min. Good. I'm going to give it one more minute. Henry found something. Eric, I'm not sure what variation you're talking about, where I have that. But okay, I'm going to just talk about the move that actually makes some interesting ideas, that the queen, after checking on these two squares, I can actually go to d1. And I have created a small problem. Right? I mean, it's not an unsolvable problem. I think it's worth calculating. Again, this is one of those moves where if I see it, I will not stop calculating after this. Because most of you said that there is nothing interesting for white, but queen d1 is definitely interesting. Yeah? So let's say I I wish I can ask this as a question on the board, but I cannot because there are multiple answers. Okay. All right. I'm going to actually ask this question for black. So I'm going to play this move on the board to make our life a little bit easier. Queen takes, queen takes. Okay, this is the position. Yeah. So now white, of course, wants to play queen h5, queen d1. But I'm going to ask this question for black. I think white might be missing something. So we need to fine tune a little bit. The idea of going queen d1 is just not going to work. And I'm going to ask this question for black. Okay. So let's say pause, and I'm going to ask the question.
You have 3 minutes this time, though. 2 minutes is like a bit short.
Short. Well, you know that white's move is basically queen h5, queen d1. Yeah. And black has to, by the way, for black, play king g7. It's actually kind of easy, right? Trust me, you're not going to find it too hard. The only part where I have to make sure that
I get
the only part I have to make sure that I give you a clue is if you have a choice between 5 and 2, pick 2. That's the clue I can give you. I cannot tell you anything anymore. Okay. Just remember that. I'm asking the question right now. And also, when your king is moving, you go to h8 and you go to g7. That part is, you can go to h7 too. So I'm just telling you those moves. Go to h8, go to g7.
Wait, what does it want in the beginning?
So white simply, black's first 2 moves I'm already giving you, right? Just play king h8, and after white plays check, king g7. Okay. Now, when white goes to queen d1, that's when I want you to find a move. And I gave you one small clue because there are 2 winning moves. If there is an option between 5 and 2, I want you to pick 2. That's a clue. If you find 2 winning moves, then you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I found it.
Thank you.
I see.
I think my elaborate clue system was a little tricky for some of you. Some of you got it. I like it. See, I told you 2 minutes is more than enough for this. Aryan, I don't understand what you're going on and on about this. Okay. I'll tell you, Aradhya. I think I'll tell you what.
Yeah, but objectively, 2 is a better move, right?
2 is definitely the better move. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely the better move. Okay, I think the time is it up? Let's check. Yep, just ended. All right, so the point we were talking about is this, and then queen d1. Now I said 2 because there are 2 moves. You guys should all see this. I basically want to find knight g3 check idea, but you have both knight e2 and knight f5, and that's why I gave you a small hint. I didn't want you to play knight f5 and say I found the idea and I got it wrong. You know, objectively knight e2 is better because it stops the queen from going back for the checks. So you don't want to let that happen, and you're also kind of hitting this pawn. Most importantly, knight e2 hits a rook, threatens rook c1, threatens knight g3. So all together, so it's much stronger. Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure I said 2 or 5. But well, it's a cool little checkmate that you have, so it's a problem, right? So then I'm going to ask another question, this time for white. Okay, if this is a problem, how should white make the queen d1 idea work? It's actually easy. You just have to make sure that black's idea just now that black played doesn't work. I'm only going to give you 60 seconds. I just want you to make queen d1 work, nothing else. It's quite easy. Alexander, you're right. Queen d1 is a nice idea where you hit the knight and the rook, but you just don't want to run into this knight g3 checkmate idea. Nice. Max got it. So Wagner, James, Ryo, good.
Okay, the last question be a bit more points.
Well, yes, but I think you have more than one question still left. This is one of the craziest calculation games that I've seen. Eric, I guess I should have warned you against it. You're right. Your move is also fine. Queen h4 check is also fine. But oops, did I pause here? Okay, the question is done. The idea is very simple. You basically intermediate check first and push my king somewhere to one of these three squares. And then you go to d1 now. Now I don't have knight g3 idea because the king is blocking. And that's good enough, yeah? But here is the problem. Or actually, I'm going to put it at this point. You play queen d1, fair enough. But I think black can defend, yeah? Black can simply go... well, sorry, I should resume my share. Sorry. So you can play queen d1. Black can simply go rook c4. And after b4, black can go rook b4. If you play queen d2, black has knight c6. So you're actually not winning the material yet, right? So this one, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. It's a really nice tactic. How will white actually win material after queen d1? Queen d1 is still the move. And maybe I'll actually ask the question here, guys, to make it a little bit interesting. Yeah, right here. Not so difficult now. I made it easy for you guys because you've been calculating a lot. Let's go. Find the win. Who was playing this? Aradhya. Player who's playing white was India's first international master, Manuel Aaron. And black was Vishy Anand. James is like right onto it. Manuel Aaron was playing white. Okay, James and Ashish have found it. It matters, Ryan, because right now your plan is very straightforward, yeah? Based on what you want to try, what you're trying to do, I think your plan is pretty straightforward. Aryan, Manuel Aaron is from Chennai in India. All right, we have the last 43 seconds. Yes, so you did well. Okay, what do we have? 13 seconds left.
I think I might have seen the idea, but it says more. I think.
You've seen this where?
I think I see the idea, but maybe I should.
Actually, this idea is a little bit easier to spot now, but it was very difficult to spot from the beginning. I have to tell you, when I first calculated in this position, I was trying to solve some parts of it. I definitely stopped finding queen g4, queen d1. And I did not find this next part, which is beautiful. There is another tactical plan here, right? So queen d2 is possible, which was my first idea at all the time, but knight c6 and black is completely fine. But now you actually start coming back. And then you go queen e7 and you're completely winning. So this is a really beautiful tactical idea. Queen d1 to make this happen and then come back, right? But we're not done yet. One last question. So h takes g5, right? So actually at this point, yeah, let me ask the question at this point. So we had seen h takes g5 and we had seen what the problem is, and we know how white is going to win this game. Black has one last way to deal with this. That'll be my last question for the day.
Oh yeah, I saw the idea. Just I played it 1 more 2 moves longer.
Okay, so you can answer it. By the way, first move is king h8, second move is king g7, which, like I told you.
Yeah, I put queen g4 check, and I want to queen h4 check, queen e7. But yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask the question now. Let's say 90 seconds for this. 15 points. All right, what is exactly black's move? First move is king h8, second move is king g7. After that, you're on your own. Very nice. I see some of you are connecting the dots. Sure, Sarvana. Bye. Right, let's see if the time is up here. 23 seconds left. Given that you saw exactly what white is trying to do, yes, I think now is a good time to reopen chat. All right, time is up. So the answer is basically black has an important option, right? Check here and check. And now, of course, we thought about 3 options and we didn't think any of them mattered. But since white's idea is to go to d1 and come back to h5, king h6 actually matters. White is still better here, but at least black is not completely lost. After now queen d2, you can go knight c6. And there is no queen h5 check to come back to this g5 and e7. So to sum it up, I think this is a super crazy position. If you, with all the calculation that's in here, knight d4 is the best one. The evaluation actually, which I told you, which I'll reveal in the end, is actually equal. Knight h6, pawn h6, rook g3. Now knight f5 is clearly the move black should play. If h takes g5, white should simply just be better because there is this queen h5, queen d1. Even though black will find king h6 and not lose the rook, that position is still better for white. Black king is super, in a super bad position. So knight f5 is the most accurate move. And after knight takes, king here, queen takes, knight takes, the variation we saw, this is roughly equal. But if you ask me, I would prefer this to play from black because the d pass pawn is quite dangerous. And I think black, particularly if this bishop finds any better square, and then if the knight and bishop coordinates in the light squares, then black is really going to be stronger in this game. But overall, it's just, I mean, white can also find it very interesting if I find f5, f6, or e6. Clearly, I see you're all very much interested in talking about the game once I open the chat. I'm glad I did not open this before. All right, guys, I think that's a good place for me to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. I will, in the real game, Anand won quite comfortably. It was, unfortunately, white played queen h6. The same variation that we saw early on is what happened, and Anand won the game.